Welcome back, beautiful soul, to the Art of Aging Backwards podcast. Today, we are diving into a conversation that we feel isn't spoken about rarely ever. That every woman walking through midlife really needs to hear the inner critic, and how this little voice inside our head can dictate or influence our actions in a real world, projecting our internal world into our external reality. You will learn about what is the inner critic and how you can harness its power to heal. How this voice can either block your growth or accelerate your healing. And what steps you can take today to shift your inner self talk and reclaim your radiance. So take a deep breath, soften your body, and let's journey together beyond the inner critic and into the art of aging backwards. So, Natalie, tell us, what is the inner critic and how can you harness its power to heal?
So, the inner critic isn't a weakness. It's a younger version of us still trying to shield us from old pain. It's the part of us that decided somewhere along the way that if it could correct us before the world did, maybe we'd be safe. And maybe we wouldn't be embarrassed, rejected, overlooked, or abandoned. Maybe we'd stay lovable. So it watches us closely, almost too closely. And every time we step towards something new, vulnerable, or expansive, it rings the alarm. Don't get it wrong. Don't be too much. Don't be seen. Don't fail. Don't disappoint. On the outside, it sounds harsh, but underneath, it's protective devotion. And the inner critic becomes the loudest when we are standing at the threshold of change, right at the doorway where we're about to grow or be seen or receive more than we ever have. That's where it panics. Not because we're not ready, but because it remembers the old pain and wants to help keep us safe from repeating it. The inner critic is not the enemy. That's really important to note. It is a bodyguard with bad communication skills. That's really what it is. It learned to protect us through pressure, perfectionism, and self judgment because that's what worked once. And when we shame it, fight it, or try to silence it, it only gets louder because it believes our survival depends on its vigilance. But when we meet it with curiosity, compassion, and leadership, everything shifts. When I think back to myself as a little girl in grammar school, I was fearless, Sandra. I raised my hand without thinking twice. I spoke my truth easily and never worried about what people might say. My voice felt natural, like it belonged. But everything shifted in those awkward junior high school years. The bullying got harsher, the comments got meaner, and somewhere between, I would say, 12 or 13 years old, I learned that my voice could be punished. You know, kids would throw things at me from the back of the classroom. They put things in my curls and mocked my appearance. And every time I'd raise my hand, I'd hear, "Shut up, put your hand down, Natalie. No one wants to hear you." And without realizing it, that's when I started to shrink. I stopped answering questions. I stopped speaking up. I traded courage for safety. I became the observer instead of the one who engaged. And that's when the inner critic was born. Not to hurt me, but to protect me. It whispered things like, "Don't be too much. They can't handle it. Don't speak. It's safer to blend in. Don't fail. Everyone will see." It believed silence would keep me from shame, embarrassment, and pain. And as I got older, I realized that strategy was outdated. The world wasn't attacking me anymore, but my inner critic didn't know that. So I began the slow work of rebuilding trust with my voice. One moment that changed everything was during graduate school. When I traveled to Ghana, I spoke live on a radio station about speech therapy, and my younger self came alive again. Then later, I stood on a podium in Chicago and presented to a room full of professionals. I was terrified, but they listened, they smiled, they valued what I had to say. No one threw anything, no one told me to sit down. Instead, I was seen and welcomed. And that night, a part of the little girl in me was healed. And ever since, I've been showing up for her, not by silencing the inner critic, but by leading it. Because here's what I've learned: the inner critic softens when it realizes it doesn't have to protect us anymore. When we give it a new job, not to police us, but to guide us, it transforms. It becomes a truth teller instead of a jailer, a compass instead of a cage. And my leadership deepened the moment I understood that the inner critic isn't trying to punish me, it's trying to prepare me. It points to the places where I'm still carrying someone else's expectations instead of my own truth. And when I lead from truth instead of fear, the little girl in me finally feels safe again. I
So
know. Thank you,
good.
Sandra. So, tell us, Sandra, how can the inner critic block your growth or accelerate your healing?
Ooh. So, people talk so much about like hormones in perimenopause, but almost no one talks about the inner critic. And it's true. And how loud she actually becomes during this chapter of life. And if you've been feeling more self doubt, more comparisons, more pressure, there is a reason for that. And it's not because you are failing, it's because your entire system is shifting. And let me explain it in a way that actually uh, makes sense for you, that feels human, because you need to understand this way. When your hormones begins to shift, your sensitivity rises. As estrogen drops, your brain processes emotion differently. So those tiny like self-critical thoughts that you used to brush off so easily, suddenly they hit harder and they feel more true. Old wounds, you thought were resolved can suddenly like flare up again. And a woman who's always been feeling confident may suddenly start questioning everything. And this isn't about like losing yourself. It's your biology meeting your psychology. And then you got the vata that rises. The mind starts spiraling, overthinking, comparing, looping thoughts on what if, why can't I? Everyone seems to be ahead of me. And you start to compare yourself to your current, like you start to compare your current body with like your 25 years old self, your life to other women, your progress, that are impossible like standard. And it's like um, a soft voice on the background, like keeping repeating itself, but it exhausts you. And here at the same time, something deeper is actually happening. Your identity is shifting. And perimenopause is your second puberty. Your roles changes, your desire evolve, your value recalibrates, and the inner critic here, she panics. And she's whispering to you, you are losing yourself, you are behind, you should have figured this out by now. But here she's not trying to hurt you. She thinks that change equals danger. And when progesterone drops, which is your natural calm hormone, everything drops with it. So the smallest things feel suddenly so big, and the inner critic becomes louder, faster, and more convincing. And here she becomes your anxiety amplifier. And then we have the physical changes that arrive. The weight shifts, the bloating, the dryness, your hair changes, the fatigue, the brain fog. And here the inner critic like jumps in again. You are falling apart, you are aging too fast, but here you are actually not falling apart. You are just transitioning. And this voice, the inner critic, she begins shaping everything. Your identity, your decision, your emotional baseline, and the limits of what you believe is possible for you. And when she whispers, you are behind, you are failing, you start living as this is your truth. But when she softens and she shifts into thoughts like you are growing, you are learning, you are allowed to want more, everything starts to change within. You start to see yourself clearly again. And this is the place where you can arise into your next era. And here your body responds with calm instead of tension. Because perimenopause isn't a crisis, it's a rebirth. And the inner critic, here she's not your enemy. She's just the voice pointing you towards what's ready to evolve. But here is the truth. You don't need to navigate this chapter alone. And this is exactly why I created the rebirth experience. Because in one session, you can shift that inner voices pattern that have kept you stuck for months, decades, or even lifetimes. And here the transformation is insanely fast, is deep, and it becomes something you actually embody, not just intellectually know. And this is what emotional mastery really looks like. The kind that no hormone like therapy can actually give you. This is the medicine no one talks about. And this is the missing key for women in perimenopause who are ready to rise into their next era. So if your body is whispering, this is for me, just fully trust it. Because your next chapter is calling you, and the door to your freedom is wide open. And here the only question is, will you answer the call? And if there is even a small whisper that says something needs to change, just send us a message on Instagram with the word rebirth, or click the link in the show notes, and we will show you exactly how to begin your transformation today.
And to take this deeper, we've created the Inner Critic Shift Workbook for all of you. The link is in our show notes for our listeners to help you flip your narrative and upgrade your inner self-talk today, where you will witness the voice, rewrite the dialogue, reconnect with your body, and end your day with an evening reflection. So, if you're ready to defy the rules, embody your radiance, and become more alive with every year, hit follow, like, leave us a message, a review, and subscribe to the Art of Aging Backwards wherever you listen to podcasts. Join us inside the Art of Aging Backwards community, where the magic unfolds and transformation happens in real time. Because aging backwards isn't a fantasy, it's your birthright. And we're here to show you how. See you next week for episode 4, all about a woman's way of winning. Leadership that doesn't cost your body, with our first guest speaker. Thank you for tuning in and see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.